Welcome to 101. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. And it's another big day here at PAC 14. We've got the new kid in town, our new superintendent, Dr. Donna Hanlin. Welcome, Dr. Hanlin.
Thank you so much.
So you are like the new star in town. You're going around, you're introducing yourself to people. Most of us already know you from before. But tell me, who are you and what do you do?
Oh, well, I am the new superintendent, and I'm born and raised here in Salisbury, and I think that's what I'm excited about. And from what I hear from the community, they're happy to have someone who is from here, who knows the community, who has connections already in the community, and cares deeply about what happens here in Salisbury and in Wicomico County.
What are you finding so far? You were gone for several years, you're back. How's it changed?
You know, a lot of changes are not apparent. It's not, there's nothing that really jumps out at me. Obviously, growth. Looking at some of the changes that Mayor Jake Day is doing, he's truly a visionary for the community, and that's very exciting. I will tell you that the demographic population of our school system has changed dramatically in the 12 years that I've been gone. Our population of students that the state titles at risk, which are students who are special education, free and reduced meals.
It's very high.
It is very high. It's close to 75% of our population is considered at risk.
Right. And what does that mean exactly when you're at risk?
It means that you are in at least one of those categories, that you qualify for free and reduced meals, you are a student with limited English proficiency, or you are a student with an IEP, a student with special education needs. And so those factors make our work very complex. But as I've said, it doesn't deter me. We were, probably about 15% lower than that when I left, which is still quite high, close to 60%. But that challenge does not deter me. I see every child as an individual student who has limitless potential, and I'm just excited to be here and not deterred by the challenge.
Right. It's obvious to me from the media coverage that you've been out to every school, and you're engaging in all the different administrators and the teachers there as well as the kids. What's the sense that you're getting out there?
Very positive. Very positive. I haven't been out to every school yet. That is my goal.
Right.
With, so many schools in our county.
27?
24, 25, depending on whether you count some programs as schools. But I have been visiting as often as I can. The first day of school, I did spend the first half of the day, the morning, and I was able to get to 9 schools. I have a number of schools that I still need to visit, but I have met with all administrators together and was able to talk with them about my vision for the school system and talk a little bit about my experience as a school administrator, and how really truly when I look back at my career, my experience as a school administrator was probably my favorite role, because you are the leadership in a school is probably one of the most critical positions in our system.
Sets the tone for sure.
Certainly.
Yeah. So what is your vision?
Well, I have spent a lot of time, as I've been talking to people since I've been back. I've met with different groups, and all kinds of groups, parents, students, community leaders, elected officials, just tried to meet with as many people as I can. And from all of those meetings, all of those conversations that I've had with people, it has become clear to me, and what I've been talking about in different venues where I've been asked to speak, about 4 areas that are very important. And I won't go into them unless you'd like for me to. But
no, whatever you want.
What I think the first thing that we have to do is we have to establish a culture of trust in our school community, and beyond that, with the community, not just internally, but I believe the community is very much a part of our system.
So it's a transparency thing as well as
Very
engagement?
much so,
Yeah.
a transparency, communication, just establishing open lines of communication and trust. The second area is that we have to make sure that our schools are safe and that we have positive school climates in order for students to learn, for teachers to be able to teach effectively. And so we're working on that area as well. The third area has to do with instruction, which is really the heart of what we do, making sure that our instructional programs are systemic and that they are rigorous and relevant, that students are engaged in instruction that's meaningful to them. And then finally, what started out as a strategy was what I call a community that believes in us. And so in terms of a strategy, it's thinking about how do we get the good news out. I've heard that often from individuals that I've spoken with and groups that I've spoken with, that we don't always hear the good news. And so we're going to be very strategic about getting the good news out there, about marketing our school system, if you will,
Right.
because there are many, many good things that are happening. But I also talk about that as the ultimate goal, that when our community believes in us, it will mean that we're doing the right things.
Right.
So,
One thing you're doing is you're going to start broadcasting, televising
Yes.
the school board meetings. Now, people have asked for this for years.
yes.
And it's one of those things, once they get it, they'll realize that they didn't really want to watch those meetings, I'm sure, because they are pretty
Right.
tedious at times.
They are tedious, yes.
But that's exciting, and that's something that was definitely needed.
It is. It is.
Just the
It's-
opportunity to see what goes on.
They were making that final decision in my first board meeting, and I encouraged them to move forward with it because the board,
Right.
because I think it's just another way that we can show that we're willing to be very transparent. Our first choice would be that people would come to our board meetings
Right.
and engage with us.
They're always at awkward times, too.
Yes.
You have an early in the morning meeting.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
we have work sessions in the morning,
Right.
which are typically getting into different topics at
Right.
in greater depth. But yes, then we have afternoon board meetings and we have evening board meetings. But they are scheduled on our website
Yeah.
and
And
but-
they're very serious back and forths. It's a very serious thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Running the schools is a serious
Yes,
business.
it is a very serious
Yeah.
thing. Yes,
Yeah.
but so I'm very excited that we're using this company called Swagit, which actually connects with our board docs, which so that an individual who wants to see, well, what did they talk about related to dress code?
Right.
If they know we're talking about that, they can click on that agenda item on board docs on our website, and they can watch just that portion of the board meeting.
Excellent.
So you don't have to watch from beginning to end. Of course,
Right.
you can watch from beginning to end if you'd like to, but you can zero in on the parts of the board meeting that are of most interest.
That's really going to
to
help
you.
me in my
It's-
trade. That's
it's
excellent.
Great. It's great.
That's
Yes,
awesome.
We're very
So that
pleased.
really adds to the transparency. That's great.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. You talk about school safety, and it's one of the issues that I hear about a lot. And the timing was weird with your hiring. Was about the same time that the Teachers Association kind of started making a big deal about the safety, where teachers didn't feel safe in the classrooms. So you were called upon to speak about that. I don't know if you were really ready to talk about that, or if you even knew it had become a problem. But you spent a lot of time on the issue.
Yes, when I was in the interview process for becoming superintendent, early on, I believe it was the second interview with the board, they made their concerns very clear to me about school safety, and they had been hearing from parents and teachers and administrators that things seemed to not be going as smoothly as they'd like. They were hearing a lot about it. And
Right.
so, and I do know that WCEA, that the Teachers Association, did put out a survey, and teachers affirmed that they had concerns about what was happening in schools. So I have spent time talking with the WCEA leadership about their concerns, but I also have spoken with the entire staff at our back to school event in speaking to that second targeted area about the importance of finding a good balance between relationships that we build with students, because I think that's critical. I think we have to show students that we care about them in order to be able to teach them. But I also think that the other part of that balance is that we clearly articulate what our expectations are for students through a code of conduct that's very transparent,
Right.
that they understand, and then we strictly enforce that code of conduct. And that's critically important to me. And I think when we do that and we explain to students not, what the behavior is, what the consequence is, but why there's this consequence, they'll grow from that experience.
It's kind of sad that you have to remind a student that threatening a teacher is not going to get you anywhere.
Correct.
or,
It is.
or intimidating a
It
teacher
is.
is not going to work for you.
It is. It is, yes.
Yeah. You had a great event out at Shorebird Stadium to welcome all the teachers and to sort of meet everyone. Everyone was assembled probably for the first time ever in one environment. It's on Pac 14. I would recommend going back and seeing it on the Pac 14 website. It's a great show. How'd that go?
It went great.
Yeah.
It was exactly what I envisioned. We did bring the full staff together. I say we. I can remember early on in my teaching career here in the county that we would all come together at the Civic Center.
Right, I remember that, right.
For a period of time we
Yeah.
did that, and then that changed, and for the last, I'm going to say decade, maybe we haven't done that, that there have been other ways of getting the superintendent's message out. But I decided that here in my first year that I wanted to be able to speak to everyone face to face. Thank heaven for the great weather, because
Yeah.
it was a perfect venue for the kind of atmosphere that I was looking for, and that was that we were truly celebrating our future. And so instead of having community leaders come up and speak one after another welcoming everyone back to school, I chose to have our community leaders in our parade of champions. So every school had a representative group of 5 or 6 people. And it wasn't just your typical teacher, administrator, it was clerical staff, it was building service managers, it was cafeteria, food service employees, it was students.
It was like a working meeting, too.
Faith-based. It was.
Yeah, it wasn't just a rally, but it was a
Yes.
rally, but there was like some substance to it.
Well, and I did speak, and I
Yeah.
probably spoke a little longer than maybe, but I thought this is my first opportunity to get to speak to everyone.
Right.
And maybe my only opportunity, at least for this year, that I would get to get my message out to everyone. And I felt like it was very well received. The feedback that I have gotten was exactly what I wanted, that I am concerned about teacher morale, that I am concerned about what's happening in classrooms, that I do want to see innovative instruction, and I want teachers to feel free to think outside the box about how we're providing instruction to our students.
Yeah, just as one teacher can change your life in a positive way, one alienated teacher can really upset
That's exactly
things.
right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So it was exactly what I envisioned. And the ending with the students, we had young students from what was West Salisbury.
Right.
I believe rising 3rd graders. They had been 2nd graders at West Salisbury. And then our very talented students from the Visual and Performing Arts program came together and sang "We Are the World,"
Right.
and it was just very moving.
Right.
And that's how we ended it. And
If you watch the video, there are people crying during "We Are the World."
yeah, it was great. And the video, I can't say enough about
Yeah.
the job that Pac 14 did on that, pulling the whole rallying atmosphere together in the beginning of it.
Right.
Was great.
Yeah.
Great.
That's terrific. Now, you went to school here. You're a Bennett High School graduate.
I am.
Now, I went to Y High, so that means I don't
Okay.
like you. But
So you have on your blue.
what do you think of the new Bennett? Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. It is amazing. I was, you probably know that I moved to Hagerstown, and I was there for 12 years. And during the midst of that time, I was invited to come back for the ribbon cutting. So I had come back, which was wonderful to see
Right.
this beautiful new facility, because having been a Bennett graduate and principal
You were
of Bennett.
principal of, I can't
was-
imagine being principal of my high school.
Yeah, well,
Right.
actually, Ruth Malone,
From
who
Y
also
High,
works,
who I went to Y High with, yes.
So I can remember a story that the Daily Times did when we were both principals, because we were
Right.
both principals of our alma mater. But
Right.
anyway, I worked in that school and was a student in the school when there was no air conditioning. We had the huge chicken fans in the hallways to try to get enough ventilation during these hot days. So it was wonderful to see the building and then come back. I came back before I actually started on July 1 for the lip dub.
You must have been stunned to be in the lip dub and go, what the heck's going on? This is such a positive, cool thing.
It is a positive, cool thing,
Yeah.
but you know what? That's what I remember.
Yeah.
Because we started Rock and Roll Revival when I was in that school. Jake Day built the Memorial Garden when
Right.
I was there. And so my memories are very positive. And so it is a cool thing, the way they pull that together so quickly with all the spirit of the students and participation of the students. But it really didn't surprise me. It just was exciting.
With Dr. Fredrickson, who can be kind of a stiff guy, he's wearing the Bennett hat and the whole thing, and he
Right.
hands you the bouquet in that video. I get goosebumps. It's a
Yeah.
great moment. It really is.
Yeah, it was actually a torch.
A torch. I'm sorry, it's a
That's
torch.
okay. He
Right,
passed
yeah.
the torch.
Right, that's what it was, right.
Which was, just a quick split second.
Right.
But yeah, that was fun. It was a lot of fun to do that. Yeah.
So it was a great welcome back to Salisbury kind of thing.
Yes, it was. And then of course I've been over there since I've been back officially since July 1. Been in all 4 of the high schools actually meeting with students, talking to them about expectations and about how we can work with students to ensure safe schools. So Bennett, I was just there yesterday, which brings that to mind.
So you missed the Bennett construction, you missed the Bennett Middle construction, which there was some controversy. They finally finished the phase 3 at Bennett, the fields. My daughter's playing lacrosse in the new stadium now. Lacrosse, playing soccer in the new stadium.
Yes.
It's nice. I'm not allowed to call it a stadium because it's not a stadium. It's just a field. I understand.
Okay.
Because there's only one county stadium. But it's beautiful. It's what the kids have needed and they've deserved for so long.
Yeah, it is. I haven't actually been to the field yet. That's one of the things
Gotta
that's
go.
on my list, but it is beautiful.
Yeah.
When I drive down College Avenue, of course, I see it. And I, just on my way here today, I was able to, take a glance over, and it is a wonderful facility. And our student representative to the board spoke at the last board meeting about how wonderful it is to have that field finally.
And it's not a luxury. It's what we deserve, what our
Yes,
kids deserve.
yes, yes.
Because sports is almost as important in academics in terms of building character.
I believe that. I
Yeah.
believe that. I call it the hidden curriculum.
Right.
It's I believe that's very true.
So West Salisbury is the next big new thing that we're getting. How's it going?
It's going well. We're on schedule, I believe. Waiting for some funding issues to settle, but
Right.
we're scheduled to take the building down and then replace the building, I believe, to open in September of 18.
Right.
Yes, so that's very exciting. I came for the groundbreaking, which was before July 1, but such an important event. And I wanted to see, they did that on the last day of school so that the students could participate. And I have great photos that from that day as well, with the students with the shovels in their hands. And
Right.
each one got to be a part of that. And that was actually where I got the idea for the students singing "We Are the World,"
Okay.
because they performed that at that event.
Right.
So very, very exciting for that community to begin to visualize.
And
what-
again, there
what
were
that
some
replacement
tensions,
school
some
is.
natural political tensions over what to
understand that.
do there. But it's all going to work out.
I think it is.
And
yes.
there was some
I'm
savings,
excited
so I
about
guess
it.
the process was worthwhile.
Yes.
There's some repairs going on at Glen Avenue. I guess Beaver Run has some stuff going on. Parkside has a project?
Parkside has an HVAC renovation. I
Right.
believe that's accurate. Not as up on the details
Right.
of our facilities. I know we're going to be working on a new track at Mardella, which they're very anxious
They're
about.
very excited
Yes,
for that too.
very
They've wanted that
excited.
for a long
Yes,
time and deserve that
yes.
for a long time.
And then also some systemic renovations and roof replacement at Wycomico Middle School.
Right.
So always looking at making sure that our buildings are in good shape for optimal student learning.
Right. And the Y Middle thing is absolutely needed. It's almost an emergency type project.
That's Y Middle is. I worked at Y Middle
Yeah.
as a guidance counselor, and that's. I think my father actually was maybe one time Wycomico High School. So yes,
Right,
that
it
building
was.
has been around for a while,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
That's cool. Now, you told me forever ago that when you were a little girl, you used to play teacher.
Yes, I did.
Did you ever imagine that you'd be a teacher and you'd be like the teacher?
Well, if you mean the teacher, like superintendent
Yeah,
teacher,
you're teacher
never
number one.
imagined that, never imagined that, but I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. Yeah, growing up, that was my one goal. I wanted to go to college, learn to be a teacher, and come back and teach here, and that's what I did. And I taught for 6 years before I had this desire to make a difference with more children, and so I finished my master's degree or certification in guidance and counseling. But even then, I had no aspirations to be an administrator, and so there have been people who have encouraged me throughout my career, and I give them a lot of credit for nudging me along to become an administrator, to get my doctorate, and then, ultimately it was my husband who said, I shouldn't tell you this, but Dr. Fredrickson's retiring, and you said the only
Really?
place you'd ever want to be a superintendent
Yeah.
is at home. So I gave that a lot of thought, because I had actually retired in Washington County and was working in higher ed, enjoying
Right.
something different,
Right.
and gave it a lot of thought and decided, yes, this is something I want to do to come back to the community.
It seems like, and I'm saying this with all due ignorance, but it seems like higher ed doesn't have the same challenges that being in a public school system does.
It was very different, and you're right. Just even on the surface, and
Yeah.
not that because students typically who are there want to be there.
Right.
So yeah, but I learned a lot. I was in my last experience was at Shepherd University, which was the teacher education program. So I
Right.
was seeing that from the other side of how we prepare teachers to be better teachers, and so it was interesting seeing it from that perspective.
Now, my 20-year-old son thinks he wants to be a teacher, but he's not entirely sure because he thinks he wants to make more money than teachers make. What would you tell someone who's on the border on the fence about whether to be a teacher or not? What is the reward in being a teacher?
The reward is the relationships that you have with students. And since I've been back, that has just been made more and more clear to me how important the relationships and the impact that you can have on a student's life. I run into people all the time since I've been back who say, I don't know if you remember me, but, and it's personally gratifying, but it's also just reinforces to me the importance of having relationships with students and the impact that you can have. So that's what I would say. And I would also say, don't go into it for the money.
Right. It's got to be a calling.
Because it has to be a calling. My father said to me growing up, I clearly remember him saying, I love going to work every day, and you should select a career that you love, so that when you get up in the morning and you go to work, you're anxious, you're excited to go to work and do the work that you do. And that's true for me.
Yeah, I made a big mistake years ago because journalism, newspapering is a calling because you don't make a lot of money.
Right.
And I wrote an editorial saying teachers should be satisfied with the money they make because it's a calling. They're not in it for the money. Well, that was not very well thought out.
That didn't go over real big.
But speaking of that, it's interesting to me that everyone has an opinion about how the school system should be run, and they all apply it based on when they were in school 30, 40 years ago. But they don't understand how things have changed so much and how different it really is.
It really is different. Well, first of all, society is much more complex.
Right.
The issues that we deal with, we talked about students who come from poverty in terms of qualifying for free and reduced meals, just makes our work so much more complex in reaching those children. But it's the relationship building, and I keep mentioning that because that's just, to me, the heart of what we do, literally. The relationship building has not changed. That's still very important. Sometimes it's a little more difficult to establish those relationships with students and to show them that we care, because often the most challenging students have put up a very thick wall and don't want you to move beyond that. But I think
Right.
if we work hard enough, we can do that. But it has to, there's so many different factors that have caused education to change. I'm very excited about the fact that the legislation now has changed, giving the authority back to states for governing what happens in education with the Every Student Succeeds Act. for,
As opposed to No Child Left
as
Behind.
opposed to No Child Left Behind, and the current administration's iteration or attempt to change No Child Left Behind through Race to the Top initiatives. And it just, to me, the pendulum has swung so far to the point where accountability measures were really dictating what was happening so strongly in schools that teachers didn't feel that freedom to be innovative and be teachers the way that they were trained to be teachers, and to be creative and working with students, that it was all about the test scores.
So they're teaching for the MSPAPs and things like that, you know.
MSAs
Right.
and making adequate yearly progress, which, on the surface, the community, and that's in the past, but the community would look at it and say, oh, I don't want my child in a failing school.
Right.
They really didn't understand the details of how those labels came to be. And so it's refreshing to be part of in this year is when the Maryland State Department of Education is creating what those measures are going to be moving forward. And so as a superintendent, it's great to have a voice at that table to to think about what's best for students in Maryland.
Speaking of the state, are you going to be able to meet the new Labor Day requirement, or will you get a waiver?
That's a very good question. That's
I know you have time to worry about it, but yeah.
We do. We're going to be convening our calendar committee earlier than we normally do in any given year under Dr. Townsend's leadership. She'll be bringing that group together and looking at creating a calendar that does comply with the executive order, which is starting after Labor Day and finishing by June 15th within the law now, which is 180-day school year. It's going to be very challenging to do that, to consider the instructional needs of students and the professional needs of staff, considering our bargaining agreements, considering our bi-state agreement with Delaware.
Right.
There's just so many complex factors involved in creating a school calendar. But we'll also, more than likely, in fact, I've asked Dr. Townsend to also develop for the board's consideration and the public's, all of this will go to the public for their input, but a post-Labor Day calendar, a pre-Labor Day calendar, so that we have those options in case we are to choose. The governor's executive order uses the language that a waiver would be available for a compelling reason, but we don't know what that means. We don't know what compelling reason means. So we'll be looking at both options and be ready for what the board determines is best for our community.
I don't want to beat this too much, but there seems to be a negative perception about the county school system to a degree. And I used to have it, but then my kids got in the system and I saw how good it really was. So I knew that I was wrong about that. And I know other people, when they get involved in the school system, they learn so much. Joe Ollinger, who's someone I've always really liked, great community guy, always very critical of the school system, gets on the school board and suddenly he realizes what's really going on. How can we get more people to understand how special our school system is?
Well, I think it's a responsibility of all of us, I believe. It's a responsibility of me as superintendent. In fact, one of those 4 target areas that I've spoken to has to do with ensuring that we have a community that believes in us by being out there and getting our good news out in multiple ways. I think, generally we have a tendency to believe that we communicate something once, that the word's going to spread, and that is not at all the case.
It's hard to get it to stick.
It is hard to get it to stick, but then also getting the community involved. And so in some of the venues where I've spoken, I spoke at Greater Salisbury earlier and the Chamber today, I'll be talking about how important it is for the community to get involved, and when they hear good news, to spread the good news.
And the mentoring program's a way in.
It is.
Certainly.
It is. There are lots of ways, but we need to continue to build those vehicles for getting the good news out, because there is so much good. I just came from Wycomico High School, where the American Spiritual Ensemble performed in front of our choral students. And it was very moving, their music, dating back to the times of slavery and where the spiritual music comes from. Our students were I would almost use the word mesmerized, and were so involved. And you know, they didn't have to. They didn't live during that time. They don't necessarily understand the emotion behind all of that, but they were very engaged, and I was so proud of them. And that's just one little example of how great our students are, how great our schools are. I spent time at Wicomico High School for the hour before the program, just walking the halls with Mr. Brady. And I went in classrooms where students were engaged on computers, where they've gone to a paperless classroom. In this particular classroom, where the teacher, second-year teacher, was working on annotating a piece of literature. And those students were so engaged in what she was doing. We have great things happening in our schools, and we just need to be constantly thinking about how we're going to get that word out.
Well, we're thrilled to have you back in the community.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in here today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
She's Dr. Donna Hanlin. She's the new superintendent of schools for Wicomico County. We're thrilled to have her back here in our county, trying to teach our kids and make them better people. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent Newspaper. Another edition of One-on-One right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and One-on-One. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.